It's your girl Cindy Grace, and welcome to another episode on the Walking Grace podcast. You already know how it is on here. This is a platform where God turns all the messes that we've been through into a whole message, and our tests and trials into testimonies. And so, whoever I bring on here would either have a testimony or a message, or even both, right? But today, I have an amazing testimony. Listen, I'm going to take my time with this one, and I want you to take your time too, because the lady I'm about to introduce to y'all here, she is a phenomenal woman. Like she has defied life a couple of times. This is a woman that has been through stuff, and God has shown the impossible through her, right? So I just hope that as she shares her message with you, her testimony with you today, that you can see that if God can do it for her, God can do it for you. And God is still in the business of making the impossible possible, right? So without further ado, I just want to scream, welcome, my sister, welcome, Mrs. Amber Roberts. I mean, it's insane what God has been doing in her life. Right. So today she's going to be walking us through the journey on how God has seen her through as a sickle cell, Amazon. That's what I call her, as a sickle cell Amazon. She is, honestly, and how she has defiled all the things that the doctors have told her that she couldn't be or she couldn't do, and how God has shown himself strong in her life. So before we go into that meet, sister, please, first of all, introduce yourself to the people.
Okay, well, my name is Amber Roberts, and I reside in North Carolina with my husband of 16 years, celebrating 17 years this year. Time definitely flies. Yes, and I am a mom of 5 miracle children, and I am a co-pastor of Vision City Church, as well as I own a company called Love Amber Company, where fashion is our love language, which was founded in 2015. And I help women entrepreneurs get started in their business, really launch them, giving them that foundational start, as well as coaching and mentoring, just loving people, where they're at, and helping them to move forward in their life, not just by, school and work, but just trying to help them to find their identity in Christ and how that can be used in the marketplace as well. So, that's what I do in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sis. So let's get straight into it because we don't waste time on here, right? Share your testimony. Tell us where this whole thing began. I mean, I've already given them a bit of where you are and who you are. So just let the people just take us through the journey of your health and to the recent testimony that God did in your life.
Well, I was born with a condition called sickle cell anemia, which is to the doctors, they believe that it's basically a death sentence at a certain point in age in life, where it used to be you didn't make it past 18, 20. And long years ago, even probably didn't even live that long. So I grew up with sickle cell with me and my brother. We both had sickle cell. And it was something that really took a toll on my life. I was very sick at a young age. And I would have episodes. You have episodes that are off and on, unpredictable. You never know when you'll have a crisis. I would find myself laughing in school, playing, and then literally within the next second screaming out in pain, because literally it can shift just like that, your cells, to cause a blockage in your joints and have a crisis. People really didn't understand it too much back then. At least the people around me, didn't really understand how you could be fine one minute and then sick the next. So you got accused a lot of just not being believed, just needing attention and things like that. Yeah. And so throughout, growing up, I was definitely I would say kind of sheltered. I mean, I did certain things, but at the same time, just being careful and mindful of my health, because they would tell you there are certain things that you don't need to do. So there are certain activities that I started in high school, like track or drill team, that I would have, or color guard, that I would have had to quit because of the conditions of my body, and things like that. And so, when I turned, about 17, I started to kind of live a rebellious lifestyle, just really angry and upset. Really, and I grew up in a good household. Even though my mom and dad divorced at a young age, he moved right around the corner, so he was still involved in my life. But around that age of 17, it was just like the enemy, just really trying to just take me out mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I found myself in an abusive relationship, at a young age, and didn't really tell anybody. But this particular person would literally put me in the hospital, and knew that I had sickle cell. I knew that like stress triggers crises. So I found myself around that age, kind of just going through a lot of just inner turmoil. Just really not understanding this life, understanding why I had to go through the things I had to go through as far as my pain was concerned, and then end up with no good guys. And then I had like 2 bad relationships, one right after another, and both of those relationships did result in me getting an abortion, because of just the fear of what I was told about not having kids. And so that you don't need to have kids, you can die. And then on top of that, I mean, I'm being in an abusive relationship kind of contributed to, because I'm like, I don't want to have a child by someone who's abusing me, so it's like all of these factors together, even at a young age, just scared, not really having anybody to give me a different, to tell me that there was a different way, that there was a different answer. But God knew. God knew, because when I was formed in my mother's womb, he called me a prophet. And I didn't know that at the time. So the things that I would see, the things that I would hear, the things that I would know, I didn't understand that it was all leading up to what was to come. And so, like, I remember, I turned to alcohol, which is which I would just drink. And you don't need to be drinking having sickle cell, first of all. But I would just tell people, oh, I'm just drinking it, and I was like, and I knew inside I'm numbing the pain. But all while I was doing that and drinking, I used to tell God, I said, well, one day I'm going to serve you. And so the abusive relationship, to escape it, I realized, you know what, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go to college so that way I can move out of the city and get away from this man. And so me and my cousin decided to go to college together, and we go there, and I see a group of people. About 2 months into college, I see a group of people, and I'm like, they're different. There's something about them that I was like, they're different than the people that I've seen before that profess Christ. And I said, whatever it is that they have, I want that. I was like, because they're sincere, they're legit. It just seems like they have a different about themselves than the people I have met in the past. And so I got to meet the people who were over the Bible study group, and one of them is my husband today. When he saved me, I literally, it was like a whole new life was born. And so from that point forward, fast forwarding on to life, I'm saved. We're saved. I love God, but yet and still, there's still life issues. I still have sickle cell. I still have issues. And things that he's taken me through the process of healing. He had to take me through the process of healing from the mind wounds that you get from having abortions. He had to take me through that process, to even fast forward into believing that I used to believe I would never have kids. Even though I was saved, I used to believe that was my punishment, because I committed this thing, and that's my consequence, and I will never be able to have kids, because you don't get another chance.
The doctor says so too.
Yeah, the doctor
tells you that.
The doctor says, no, you can't have kids. The enemy tells you, you did this, you can't have kids. So it's like screaming around you, like it's impossible, And so I go throughout my journey of life and I get married, and my husband just prophesying to me, letting me know that God was going to redeem that which was stolen from me. That it was not going to be a matter of, he wasn't there to punish me. You know what I mean? That I will be able to have children, and I will be okay. And that he would over every pregnancy, he would always prophesy that it would end in the baby being protected, because they would try to scare you. Okay. Yeah. They would try to scare you and say, the baby this, the baby that, you this, the baby could be addicted to drugs because if you get into a crisis and you have to take medicine. And I was just to be like, I would just keep coming back with each time. No, my baby's fine. My baby will be okay. I remember one time a nurse standing at my bedside. It was like the third pregnancy and was like, when are you going to stop? Like, haven't you, like, she was just, why do you, she's like, why do you keep doing this? She was just like, your luck just may run out. And I was just like, no. I was like, fortunately, I don't run on luck. I'm blessed. It's God. I mean, but these are the things that bold things that people would say, that, would have to really, you have to combat against those voices of the enemy to know
negativity,
that God's promises for me are yes and amen. And so after the first child, I got a little bold. I was like, okay, well, I was able to do it, now, and here's the thing, when you have faith in God, it's not saying that things don't go wrong or things are just always smooth sailing. It's saying that I trust you that when things don't go the way I think they should go, but I trust you for the outcome. And so for me, with my first child, you would think after that, because I had a seizure. After he was born, I went into a seizure, that I never had a seizure my whole life. I scared my husband. I scared my mom, and I wake up in a CAT scan and doctors come running in, but I made it out. I made it out. And so I could have said, you know what? Well, that's it. They were right. I almost died. Maybe I just escaped this by the skin of my teeth. You know what I mean? Other people may be like, oh, you were lucky.
Yeah.
But I had to make a decision that, no, he didn't say I was going to have just one child. You know what I mean? So I have to believe God that it takes so much faith, because it's like you're putting your life on the line.
Yes.
But it's like, God, you got to do it. You got to do it again. And so I had my second child, smooth sailing, no issues, no problem. Third child, smooth issues, no problem. Fourth child, I'm going to talk about the fourth child because I think it's important that people understand that when you have your ears to God's lips, there's nothing, he'll tell you the things concerning you. And that's how you know you have the mark of God on your life and that you're in the right place doing the right thing, because you're not just out there alone. You know what I mean? And so with the fourth child, I ended up, I was very sick. I had pain crises for weeks where the pain wouldn't go away. And they were like, and during that, you have to take medicine. You have to take strong medicine. They were like, oh, and this is when they said the baby could be addicted to medicine. But God gave me a vision of the baby being surrounded and protected and shielded. So there's nothing, so it was like, okay. And then I remember after that long bout of sickness where the doctor told my husband, because he was on his way out to go home and check on the other kids. And she said, well, you know what? There's nothing I can do for her. Like, we cannot help her. We don't know what to do. And he was like, okay. And that's important too, to understand, to have a man of faith. Because he don't just let stuff roll and go. Yeah. No. And literally everything he's spoken has come to pass. And he was like, he turned around so quick. He walked up to the hospital room and he came to the room and he'd be confusing me because he was like, get up. I was like, get up? What you mean get up? I can't get up. He's like, no, get up. I need you to sit up. And he's like, because the doctors have said this, blah, 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 blah. And he was like, and we're not going for that. And we began to pray in the Spirit. We began to pray in the Holy Spirit. We began to declare, thus saith the Lord. See, sometimes, one of the things I said today is that sometimes you think things are happening to you, but it's for you. You know what I mean? We had to begin to take on a mindset that, because we have been in the same situation, but it was that determination that when the enemy comes to you and begins to lie to you, are you going to take flight and leave, or are you going to stand up and fight? 2 days later, I was released. You know what I mean? From the ICU home. Wow. Yeah. Cause he's just like, no, that's not how how this is going to end. And after 2 weeks, I'm like, well, why did you just do that in the first place? No, but we should have did this the first day. No, but it takes time. It takes that boldness that to rise up in you
Yeah.
when you're standing in the face of what they said, you know? And so I remember going home, and a couple of weeks later, I was having some issues in my on my side, and we went to the doctor. We went to the ER, and they were like, "Oh, it's just a baby pressing against your lungs. It's this, it's that. It's it's nothing." And so I'm like, "Okay, but I mean, the baby ain't that strong yet." And so we go home. We go home, and we didn't have a peace. We didn't have a peace, and I was just like, "Something's not right."
Wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we began to just pray. And he was just like, and this is just talking about one of many testimonies that were that literally I could be dead and gone, but God, because he speaks, because he knows. And he was like, my husband said, God said pulmonary embolism. Now, mind you, we didn't know what that was. So we get on the laptop and we Googling pulmonary embolism. And at this point, I'm not super spiritual. I'm not super spiritual. I'm not, the Lord has no fear. Is like, what?
Fear is like
this is like, look, I'm still human.
Humanity comes in. Yeah.
I'm still human. Get me back quickly. I'm scared. Because when I read that and I'm like, I mean, and when he says God said it, I know it's real. So we get back to the ER. We rush back to the ER. We tell them what to look for. We say, look for a pulmonary embolism. So they rush me to get a CAT scan, pulmonary embolism. And I tell the doctor, I'm like, and of course, sometimes, and that's another thing going through with sickle cell. These hospitals do not understand. They don't hardly care. They treat you like you're a drug addict. They treat you like you're just there. And I'm not saying that people haven't abused the system, but what we go through is so hard. And I have so many stories of just even that alone, of just having to endure the treatment of it being in a place where you're not believed. So, but back to this, we get back there and I tell the doctor, I'm like, am I going to die? Cause I'm reading pulmonary embolism. He's like, no, if you were going to be, he's just like real nonchalant. If you were going to die, you'd have been dead already. And I was like, okay. So we get through that, but to know that literally so many people die from pulmonary embolism. They were shocked.
What is pulmonary?
Pulmonary embolism is a blood clot in your lung. A blood clot in your lung. And most people die instantly. There was a doctor who had the same story, and she was an actual doctor. Because my OB told me what happened with her. She was an actual doctor who went in. They didn't see it. She died of a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in your lung. It's very dangerous. And so they were able to give me the medicine to dissolve it and to go through and treat me. But had I not came back, you don't survive
that.
No,
and you were pregnant with your fourth child.
And I was pregnant with my fourth child. Yeah. Oh. And so it was God that revealed a pulmonary embolism. And it was just like, when you go through something like that, your faith is on a whole nother level, because it's like he spoke and we heard, and it was
certainly
true. It was not, And so your mind is blown, like, God, you are incredible. You are amazing. If I was supposed to die, it wasn't supposed to be my time, he would have never spoke that. You know what I mean? If I wasn't supposed to have this baby and she wasn't supposed to be here, I wouldn't be here. But he spoke it. And so we got through the fourth pregnancy, which was the hardest one, and then the fifth one, which was about 9 years
miracle baby
from my youngest was 9 at the time, and we was like, we're having a baby. What? And so the enemy once again wants to rear his head. Oh, you're 40. You should have heard the things that they were telling me at the doctor's office. I was 39 at the time. And they were like, we need to do this test. We need to do that test. She could have this. You have to think about what you would do if this comes back. At one point they said, she may need a blood transfusion in the womb. They thought I had some type of other stuff. And my husband was like, no. He said, this is going to be the best pregnancy you ever had.
Your husband needs an award, yo. Like, let me
He
tell you
said,
something. They don't make them like that
yeah,
anymore. Like, they
yeah.
don't.
He said, he said, no, this will be the best pregnancy that you ever had. And so all that stuff, I said, you know what? Keep it. I don't need all y'all genetic testing. I don't need all that fear. I don't need all that that tell me what could be, what couldn't be. Because sometimes they tell people what is and it ain't. And then they, they talk about abortion and terminating the pregnancy and all these things. If you think this and this, no, I'm good. And so I kind of am glad because even throughout the pandemic, it was the best pregnancy that I ever had and the less hospital visits I ever had because they didn't because my OBGYN had got fired or they had let them all go because of the pandemic. Let them all, yeah. So I was without a doctor for a while and it was a little scary. I was like, what we going to do? What we doing here, God? Like riding by faith and during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, I want to add this, that a sickle cell crisis can happen about every 2 months, 3 months, just depends. And the crisis can be about a couple of days to a couple of weeks. Every 5 years, you'll have a crisis that may last a couple of weeks. For me, everybody's story is different. And so I was like, God, I had to tell God, I don't want to go to the hospital during the pandemic pregnant. I don't want to take that chance and didn't have to. Only time I went was voluntarily for my doctor's appointment. And that was very rare because I went without a doctor for a while. So that was just a miracle in of itself. And then so then when she was born, it was just a miracle, no issues. I do remember, I will say this, I do remember God's hand is just amazing. Her coming out and my husband saying that they were a little bit concerned because she wasn't crying and she was turning blue. And they had called some lady in the room and she was a older lady. And they said she volunteers at the hospital here. And they said, we call her when the babies are having issues. And they called her in the room and she just said, hey there. And then she turned back her color and began to cry out and was fine ever since. And so I was just like, that's an angel. Like God has you on every side, everything that concerns you. You know what I mean? Everything that concerns you, everything that concerned me, it was like he was literally there, And so going throughout my journey with sickle cell before I lead up to this latest thing that happened, it was like I took on a different mindset from when I was unsaved. I took on a different mindset. I became a warrior for God. I became angry at Satan. I became angry at Satan. And so I began to spread a message that when you're in pain, look for your assignment. And the reason why I began to spread that message is because I said, God doesn't waste anything. He said all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and have been called according to his purpose. And so what that means is I'm not just sitting here suffering just for the sake of suffering.
There's a purpose to your pain.
It's a purpose. So what happened was so then I said, okay, so I made up in my mind, every time you afflict my body, I'm going hard for God. Like I said, so if you have me up in this hospital, that's fine. Cool. But everybody in this hospital that I come in contact is going to know about God. So like there will be times, my husband is my witness, that I will be screaming out in pain. And then the nurse will walk in. And the next second, I'm prophesying to her. I'm praying over her. I had doctors sitting on my bedside at times. Doctors crying. People, because I was like, you may want to let me out of here. Because I'm going to keep on until I get out of here. And so, because I said, if I'm here, it's for a reason. So what is that reason? That's one of the reasons why I also do so well with sickle cell is because, yes, it's very hard. It's not easy when you're going through those times. But when you hold on to the promises of God, I remember God giving me a promise 17 years ago, and he was just like, I'm going to heal you. And he was like, and it's going to be a healing that will take place on record, and it will be for the world to see. It's not going to just be, you know how we say, oh, I'm healed in Jesus' name. It's not just a confession, but it's going to be a manifestation. And so I've been holding on to that promise, and then holding on to the mindset that, I don't want to, I'm not a victim. Everybody has
Yes.
issues and things that they've hands that they've been dealt. You know what I mean? But God says His grace is sufficient for me, and it's either up to me to choose to believe it or choose to live in torment. And so it's like, yeah, the physical pain is real, but people don't understand how powerful the mind is. You know what I mean? How powerful your words are, the authority that you have, that you can say to this mountain, be removed and cast it to the sea. And when you have operated on that level of faith and you have seen Him do that, then you can do it again and again and again. And so with this latest incident, and I'll go into that, it was definitely one of the greatest miracles that I have experienced in my life. Because,
please tell us.
I've experienced a lot, of miracles. But with this particular miracle, I was diagnosed with COVID-19. And my whole family was sick. And we have been avoiding this because I'm like, people know with sickle cell, you can't get sick. Don't get sick. Don't get a cold. Don't get a flu. Don't get stressed. All these things trigger sickle cell. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, this is not what I wanted, because I know what it does for the body alone by itself. Then you add sickle cell on top of it. And so our whole household was sick, and I'm trying to take care of everybody. And then finally, I go down. And I go down hard. And I'm trying to deal with it at home, and I'm unable to deal with it at home. So then finally, I'm taken to the hospital, and we get there. And yeah, one of my worst fears was like, I don't ever want to be in the hospital alone. I've never had to be in the hospital alone since I've been married, which was 16 and a half years. And so with COVID, you can't have
visitors,
people there. Yeah. So it was just like I remember God told me years ago, dig a well. He was like, he was like, maybe 4 years ago, he gave me a prophetic word about digging a well, because you need to make sure that you have something in the well that you can draw from. Because a lot of people, they operate from an empty vessel. They operate from just enough, from running on E and barely getting by. And so at this moment in my life, as I was facing what possibly could be, I'm like, is this it? It didn't seem, it didn't seem like it was, but your natural mind goes to those places, because I'm like, of everything that you've seen and experienced. And then to be told that not only do you have COVID, but you have COVID pneumonia. So, and so literally I'm I'm just bleeding out of my mouth. It's just scary. And I'm like, what is this? What is this?
Oh my goodness.
And a part of it was demonic, first of all. Let me clarify the body. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I was like, I was going through these different phases, and I had to do it alone. I had to do it alone. Wow. And I said, and God had to remind me that your husband has been there, but I've been there too. And so this is a time that I'm going to show you that all you got is me. He's there. And so literally I went through that process of COVID pneumonia, and it was so bad, and I could just do nothing but call on his name. And even though it was bad, it was weird too, because they kept telling me, you're doing so good to have COVID pneumonia. I'm like, this is good. If this is good, then I'm scared to see what's, because they were the worst is. Because they were like, you don't need the oxygen. You desire, because with sickle cell, when you have crisis, you want the oxygen. It helps the blood to flow through. But I didn't need it. So my oxygen never fell below 92. Most people with COVID pneumonia's oxygen falls super low, and they have to be on oxygen for months after COVID pneumonia. It takes a really bad toll on the lungs. God shielded my lungs. He shielded my lungs. I had no lung damage. I had no lung damage. I'm thinking, maybe I need to be on oxygen. Doctor was like, if you desire it, but you don't need it. I'm like, are you sure?
Mhm.
And they kept saying, and I didn't have to take any COVID antiviral medications. That is so, I'm telling you, that's how I knew that a lot of this,
What?
that's how I knew it was, that's how they said, we don't believe you need it. It was like, so if it's not necessary, we don't want to because it can damage your kidneys or something like that. And so they was just like, you don't need it. If we feel like at one point you need it, then we'll give it to you. And I'm like, so this whole time I'm just like, this is strange. I'm like, but this is God. At the same time, it was like, it was like he was just shielding me, like and then I just had prayer warriors that will call and just pray and just go in. Okay, they don't play. Like the people who because we didn't really release it to the public at the time, because I consider myself an influencer in some degree, where people
You are,
they follow me and things like that, and I just didn't feel. I just felt this weird, this eeriness, like I don't need to release this because, you know what I mean? You do have people out there that don't mean you well, and so you have to be able to know and discern when to release things and when not to. And that just even goes back to even my hospital stays. I'll be very guarded, very protected of my hospital stays. I remember even one time putting on the door, if you doubt, stay out. Because I can't have that
negative energy.
I can't have, because I'm like, it makes a difference. I have to be surrounded by people. Don't come in here with your sad story, your sad, don't cry over me. I'm still here. Hello.
Yeah.
And so, I literally didn't release it yet. We kept it private for the most part. We just we released that to an inner circle because I saw the seriousness of this. I didn't know how serious it was going to get. But it was serious and it wasn't over yet. And so I went through that process of being in the hospital and for almost 2 weeks. And then I was released from the hospital and I came home. But it didn't end. I was at home and I was in excruciating, like a day later, I was in excruciating pain in my head. And it was so bad. I had never experienced, and so when I told my husband it was worse than sickle cell, he knew something was wrong, because they say that sickle cell, they say that there's no pain that's pretty much worse than that. That it's one of the, they say even it's worse than childbirth, and so when I told him that, he was alarmed in his spirit, and I was like, I had to keep reminding myself and rehearsing God's promises, because I'm like, this feels like it's over. Like, cause this pain is unbearable. I heard people say COVID headache. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe I have a COVID headache. So I deal with it day in and day out. And I go and it was in waves. So I'm screaming. I didn't want my husband to leave the room, and he didn't understand, like, what is going on? She doesn't even want me to leave her side. Cause I'm thinking, like, if I should die at this moment, I want you to be here. I want somebody to see me and find me. Cause that's how bad it was. So then finally, after nothing worked on it, nothing. He takes me to the emergency room. And so we go back to the emergency room 3 days later after being released from the hospital. So I went through this pain for 3 days, and they say, well, they said, well, we know why you're having the headaches. And it was just like, you have bleeding on the brain. Yeah. And we were just shocked. Yeah. We were shocked. We were like, so from this point, all his promises went out the window. I said, I think this is it. Because in my mind, I'm thinking like, this may be the final. I was like, is this the final blow? Is this it? So I'm just, in my mind, I'm speechless, because I'm like, what in the world? Because, bleeding in my brain, like,
that is.
And they was like, well, and she was like, well, it's not too big, but it's not too small, but it's not too big. So that didn't sound good. So then I get rushed off. So we were at a standalone ER. So I get rushed off in an ambulance to the ICU, to the hospital. And I've never been I mean, when I tell you that, I was like, make sure we make it there, because they was driving so fast to get me to the with lights and sirens. I never experienced that before. And I've been in the ambulance plenty of times, but they never use lights and sirens. And so we get there, and I go to the ICU. And once again, he was allowed to be with me in the emergency room. But when we get to the ICU, they're like, well, it hasn't been this amount of time since you had first got COVID. Even though I don't have COVID no more, but because of the timeline, he couldn't be there. And here I am. I'm like, God, this is the worst moment of my life, and he can't be here. And I'm just trying to wrap my brain around that. Like, no, what do you mean? I'm crying. I'm asking him, can you please do something? Can you please let him stay here? Please.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't able to. So he talked to me through the glass. We talked through the glass for about an hour. I remember just people calling me. And then I remember my brother-in-law, he's like, I want you to see yourself in your tomorrow. He was like, see yourself in your tomorrow. He said, I want you to see yourself doing Love Amber, going live. I want you to see. He was just trying to get me to focus on seeing it. Because if you don't see it, you know what I mean, then you can't grab a hold of it.
No.
And so at that point, I would say maybe for a couple of hours, I was not in that place to fight. I was not in that mindset. I was kind of like in a defeated mindset, because because they were like, well, we got to see if you're going to have surgery. So I'm thinking, like, I just got through having COVID, and I'm sad because I haven't been able to see my children for 2 weeks. And then when I get home, I still haven't been able to see them because I was so sick at home. So then I'm thinking, oh, if we have surgery, that's going to be a whole long ordeal that I just don't feel like it. I'm like, I don't feel like another test, another trial. I had to tell God that. I had to tell him my real feelings. Like, I don't want that. I don't want to have to go through weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And because, thinking of brain surgery, thinking of recovery, thinking of all of that on top of sickle cell. And then it could possibly lead you back into a crisis because of and so my husband, once again,
the soldier undercover. Jesus.
I'll tell
honestly,
you.
Sometimes I want to even. Sometimes I want to even talk to your husband now, but like how, like, anyways, just keep talking.
For real, because he was like, he said,
"How do you stay so strong?"
He said, "Yeah, I don't know." He was like, 3 days. He said, my mom's birthday, because his mom had to come help us. She's in St. Louis. She came down to help us with the kids. And so his mom's birthday was on January or December 22nd. Because in my heart, I'm like, I want to be home for Christmas. But this seems impossible. It seems impossible. And so his mom's birthday is the 22nd. This happened on the 19th, 2021. Yeah. He's like, you're going to be home. He's like, I'm asking and believing God, you'll be home by my mom's birthday. You'll be home in 3 days. And I'm like, okay. Okay. 3 days. And so let me tell you what happened. So the first night of the ICU stay, they're watching me. I'm going to the CAT scan literally every hour, no sleep, every hour getting a CAT scan because they want to make sure that it's not getting out of control.
Yeah.
Then they're wanting to see, okay, we're going to have surgery, and then so the next day, the doctor comes in, the neurosurgeon, and it's like, okay, as of right now, no surgery. And I'm like, first victory.
Miracle.
Thank you, God. Thank you. Okay. I can do this. No surgery. Okay. Hours go by. Okay. We're going to let you go to step down ICU. Okay. So that means that we're making progress the first night. So I stayed one night in ICU. That next day, I left that night to go to step down ICU. I got to step down ICU, and I felt like I kept telling my husband, I feel like I'm in a dungeon. I was like, babe, I was like, cause y'all cozy and warm in the ICU. They're watching you. They're coming in every few seconds. When I get to step down, it just seems weird. And this is how I also know it was a spiritual thing going on. And mind you, during all this time, I was visited by angels. I know everybody don't understand that, but angels would come, and I would be like, I'm like, this angel must like football, because it would be on football, and I would never turn on football. And it was like, but my son, he was praying for me. I know it's weird. I can't get into all that because people don't understand, but God will assign angels to you. He assigns angels to you.
Absolutely.
And so I just remember going into the second night where I felt like I was going down into a dungeon. And I said, this looks scary. The room was dark and dingy. And I was like, and he's like, babe, you're not. And I was like, why did they put me in the basement? Why am I in the basement? And he was just like, babe, you're on the 4th floor. You're not in the basement. I said, really? But that's spiritually how I felt. And I said, babe, we got to call them. We got to pray. Something's not, the lady was really just not nice. The nurse, it was just a weird feeling. And then, so then after that, the next day, I make it through that night. And before I go into that, I made it through that night. And then, a lady came to see me to give me an IV because my IV kept going out. And she began to tell me her testimony. And she had a brain bleed before. And we talked for 2 hours. And mind you, she's not supposed to be in that long. And she was just like, you're my angel. You're my angel. I truly believe God has finally showed me out of all this time why I had to go through what I had to go through, so I could come here to tell you that you could, that you can live through it. Yeah. It was and then this chaplain appeared out of nowhere. She came, this lady came and prayed with me, and it was just like one after one, just ministering to me. Then that nurse left, and the nurse that I had like a couple of years ago, she was real sweet, came into the room ministering to me. So we got through that night, but it was such a God-filled night, even though I felt like I was in a dungeon. And then the next day, I go to a regular room. So it's like each day we're moving up and past it. And then I'm released and I'm going home. And I went home on the day that he said. I went home on the day that he said. His mom's birthday was the next day. Yeah.
Your husband is I don't know, he's a prophet.
Oh yeah,
he is.
Yeah.
He's a serious stuff. Like it's for you to have that kind of covering. Do you know, because as you were telling me this story, and as I'm seeing God's hand go through, being revealed on your life, I'm also thinking about your husband. Like he knew that you had this condition and he married you, right?
He knew. He knew because he was in. A thing about that was he was my best friend for 4 years. So we didn't date. We didn't like each other like that. We were just friends. So he saw what I had to go through. He would come to the hospital. He would bring DVDs. He would bring food and
wow.
And I even remember people being like, people say some crazy things. When we decided to be together, they were like, well, you shouldn't marry her because she's going to stop your ministry. Look at us now. Look at him.
Yeah.
Oh, and I forgot a part. I'm not done yet. So I get home and from the hospital, and I'm noticing something because when I'm in the hospital, the brain bleed was on the left side of your head, well, on the left side of my head. So it affects the opposite side. So my right side is affected. So they keep doing certain tests. And mind you, like I said, I don't really know anything. So I'm like, why are we doing all this? Like, can you write? Can you do? Yeah, I can. Yes. Hello. And I'm like, they keep asking over and over, test all the time throughout the day, testing things, And so now I get it because I shouldn't be able to move. I should be able, my whole right side could have been affected. Could have been, and really could be dead. And literally, so I get home and I'm noticing something with my eye, my right eye. And I'm like, I couldn't put my finger on it. It just looks weird. Things just look weird. So long story short, over a couple of days, I lost the right peripheral vision. of my right side gone. It just was like, so you could only see. So that's why everything looked weird, because it was, it was just like, like you're looking through a peephole, like, because your peripheral vision helps you to see,
Yeah.
And so like because I didn't know yet, I didn't understand why I kept bumping into, when I'm going to the bathroom, I would bump into the wall. Yeah, because, because that peripheral vision helps you to see that right there.
Yeah.
So finally I do some Googling and researching, and I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense, And so I do my own little test and stuff. I'm like, yeah, my right peripheral vision is gone. And so I'm panicking a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't even want no after effect. I was like thinking of everything that I do. And I was like, no, I need that. And so my friend, who has been like the prayer warrior this whole time, she said, now listen how God worked. She said, a lady prophesied to her and said there was someone with a brain bleed and that they will be healed completely. And so, because she was in a service, and she came back and told me exactly what they said. Now, mind you, they didn't tell me. They didn't tell her. It wasn't like it was, you know what I mean? It was like they literally prophesied.
They didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she came and delivered that message, and I said, yeah, I know it's from me. And so I said, so I had to declare that I'm healed. It's okay, fine, I'm healed. It's coming back. It's all going to be returned to me, And so, long story short, I had to wait a long 30 days to go back to the neurologist. And I went to the neurologist, and my vision has been completely restored. God did it.
What?
It was completely restored. My vision has been completely restored.
And what about the bleeding in the brain?
So, I wish I could actually show you. The brain bleed was about that big. And so I go to get my CAT scan. The lady, when we about to leave, she was just like, oh, I'm praying for you. And then I just have this big smile on my face, because I'm like, I'm believing God. I believe God. I just believe God, because it's supposed to take months. It could take 6 months to a year for it to be completely gone. And I went back, and the brain bleed was like so small, they had to zoom it in to where it was like a dot of like a pin dot. And I said, I told them, I need you to print this out for me. I just took a picture of it. I said, so that way I can show. And so they showed me the bleed when I came, the day I left the hospital. Mind you, it was even bigger from the ER. So I didn't never get the ER one was bigger. But the day I left the hospital, which was 3 days later, and then up to now, I went back to the neurologist, and she was just like, oh, we're done seeing you. You are released from our care. You don't have to come back. And I was just like, I was like, God,
won't he do it?
You did it again. I was like, you just did that again, God. Thank you, God. Like, he literally, when I tell you, it was a miracle. And it don't happen like that.
It don't happen like that.
Not even that quick. I said, when you go through something like that, it changes you. Because it does. I have went through a lot of miracles, but this one in particular was just different, because it was so marked by God. You know what I mean? To where that just don't happen. You don't just have a brain bleed and get out the hospital 3 days later. That ain't, and so I was just like, I'm ready to go hard, like, for God. Like, I'm just like, when you go through that, you look, ain't nothing my God can't do. And if he can do it for me, he can do it for you. And that's why God has given us, I believe, the gift of healing and faith for other people. Yes. And God has allowed us to activate that in the lives of other people, to pray and to even see miracles in their life.
So thank you, sister. We're just gonna wrap up and end. Like
Yes.
I would have gone more and asked you more questions, but I'm like, no, I think you have said it all. You
Yes.
have laid it all there. Like
Yes.
there is nothing to ask you about. There's nothing to go back and forth with. Like thank you
Yes.
so much for honoring this invitation, and please continue to do the work of God. Man, follow her on
Amen.
her Facebook page, Amber. Sorry, tell them where they can
Yes.
follow you on, please.
Amen. So you can find me on Facebook under Amber Roberts, and also
Yes.
Love Amber Company, Love Amber CO. Those are my acronyms all across social media at Love Amber CO on Instagram, on Facebook, and all of those social media platforms.
Thank you again. And yes, till next
All right.
time, take care. Bye.